We are live.
We are live. It even has a countdown. That's cool. And there's a clock in the corner and everything. I mean,
man,
yeah, it's like
you don't have to stopwatch us
I
anymore.
don't even have to stopwatch. I mean, like, there's no need for the old tech on the phone.
All it costs is $59.95. No, it costs more than that actually, but we won't. It was a minor expense for the joy of all the features that this thing is giving us. So, anyway, we don't need to make a commercial out of it. But welcome back, friend.
Yeah, no, this is good. This is we're continuing the rollout of season 5. New tech, Jamie sketching more, Kurt sending cryptic tech messages.
Well, that's only gonna get worse.
The weird sleepy cat pillow in the chair. It's all good. We're all
still
set.
there, huh?
Yep.
Wait, it's over there. I got the mirror thing going on, so oh well. Yes. So yeah, this is cool. I feel that we've exponentially raised the bar from last episode to this one. In tech. Exponential.
In tech. I like how you put the qualifier on it. You're like, it's got nothing to do with like you showing up, Jamie, or like, hey, you did some sketches, or like, how's the coffee? It's in tech. I got it.
Well, we haven't yet talked about the coffee. You know, there's another. I am so impressed with myself for having sorted out this technology. I did notice I was editing the last episode, and I realized that like I somehow lean, like I'm like cockeyed, so my face is constantly facing. So now I just need to look at the camera more, and then it'll be more like straight, right? I'm picky. I'm getting picky.
Yeah.
So
that's the next episode, man. So like,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Incremental.
I'll send you some notes. It's okay. It's all good.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate
it.
Anyway,
no notes. Yeah.
we run without them. So, well, how you been?
Good.
I mean, all things considered.
All things considered,
no tornado for you.
No. Yes, like a little bit of a surprise weather day today, but I mean, it's Texas after all. So it's I will share this that I am pretty excited. I've been on an advisory panel. We haven't done as much as I thought we might over the last year, and I think part of that's just been some restructuring of the National Main Street Center. But the work that has been done has been really interesting and exciting. And we've had some interesting meetings. But one of the things that as part of this, when you talk about the weather, is the National Park Service gave or is administering a grant through the National Main Street Center, and they are bringing resilience workshops and working on resilience toolkits for small town America and urban and midsize and downtowns, all across the country, related to sustainable design, but also resilience and disaster preparedness and things that you and I have talked about quite a bit. So I was fortunate to be asked to be part of the advisory committee that's on it. There's a lot of heavy lifting that's being done by other folks, but in the spirit of it, though, the exciting part is that we're actually going to be hosting a workshop here in Austin in about a week now. And so the National Park Service and the National Main Street folks and some consultants that they brought in and different people associated with, they're going to be presenting some materials kind of related to exactly what you were you were opening with, tornadoes, weather related events, and how it affects all of us, communities,
Yeah.
buildings, all that stuff. So,
Wow, that's cool. That's great. And especially with the category of resiliency,
oh yeah,
in that as architects as we are, it's definitely a big topic among the AIA, our member group, right? And we have some friends that are involved in a lot of that at the AIA, and I, and personally, I think we both are, you know, interested in sustainability and resiliency, and what buildings have impact on, or what impact our buildings have on climate change. And so
well, and and
uh,
and to, I mean, yourself, myself, in our practice, in our volunteer service, our kind of interest areas, neither one of us have really practiced in big firms, and we haven't done kind of large firm roundtable kind of work. I mean, we know folks who do. We understand those projects. We appreciate the complexity that those kinds of teams have and things like that. But I think what I've enjoyed in kind of bringing it back to this workshop that I'm excited about next week, and I think it's some of the work that you're doing as well in Michigan and things that you've been involved in. There's a large practice and there's a large percentage of folks that aren't necessarily being touched by those large firms. And so the work of small and medium sized practices, smaller and medium sized cities, existing buildings, just as a topic, is not something that I think that our practice or the academy has really embraced as much as they really should. I think a lot of it is still a lot of talk about new construction, a lot of talk about big buildings, and that's appropriate, to a certain degree, but I think it's a little bit short-sighted, and that's putting it mildly. I think there's a lot of people, at least I talk to, I'm sure there's a lot of, clients that you have and developers and community leaders that you deal with, that, are really kind of interested in, what kind of expertise our profession can bring to resilience at a local or regional level. And, I know people like, Ilya and, friends of ours are very conscious of that and trying to do that. But I think that what I'm hoping is to see more of a intentional push to deal with a broader focus, both from the practice, but also the academy you're teaching right now. And I know that you've tried to instill in your students this concept of existing buildings and kind of thinking about context and impacts like that, and that's a reality that we all have to embrace.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. Well, you're gonna have to follow up with that afterward. And it's funny, at the same time this week, our friends at Entre Architect, and Jeff Eccles, who does a kind of a daily uh, live chat. I believe tomorrow's topic, and maybe he's framing it more on the business side of things, as Entre Architect is sort of leans on, but um, is about resiliency. and
Hmm, good.
I think in the broader sense, yeah, the open conversation is about how do you define it, and then how does it make an impact on our businesses and I mean, at the end of the day, our all architecture offices are businesses, and so how do we then use that to advance the built environment and serve those clients that and building owners and that you're talking about.
Right, right.
So, hot topic of the week.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
and I brought it up because I just read the headline that a tornado touched in Houston. And, just again, sometimes I bring these things up because I want to take these weird jabs at like the anomalies of weather, but these anomalies are what are represent the change of the climate, and therefore have all these other scientific impacts, and um, resiliency, and these conversations that and the workshops that you're going to be doing. So anyway, thanks for that update.
Yeah, no, yeah. So coffee.
Oh,
What's what's the coffee of the day today, at least?
yeah, speaking of AIA, so I was serving on the AI Michigan regional. Well, we're not a region anymore, but the state board, right? As a representative from the Flint chapter, and my duties ended at the end of last year, and I missed the holiday party, partly probably because it was probably bad weather or something else was going on. It was a Thursday, and anyway, long story short, I get a package in the mail from the uh, now past president of Michigan, AI Michigan, and it included some local coffee. Well, Detroit coffee. Let's see if I can get this in the right position.
That sounds good.
How do you like that? It's already ground. It's not beans, but
That's okay.
it was a gift.
That's
So
very
you
that's a very thoughtful gift.
never look a gift coffee in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, well, so have you tried it?
I did this morning. I opened that box yesterday, and I made sure to brew some up today, and it is good. I think I need to work on, given that it's ground differently than uh
The ratios
my
need to be a
grinder
little bit, yeah.
my grinder typically grinds, so I need to, work on the ratio, but it's still good flavor, because it's not like as bold as it sounds or reads,
Right.
but it was nice and smooth.
That's
So
some powerful labeling there. I kind of dig
yeah,
it.
it's a very simple paper bag, you know, and then there's the back. I'm always about the show and tell. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No show and tell, but I'm having the another local blend, our little city's Grackle, which
Oh,
you've had.
I
Yeah,
like that crackle.
yeah, the Grackle's pretty good. So
Well done. Yeah, good stuff. I also have a funny cup. You see that? It's
oh,
made of silicone. It's a squishy cup. Anyway, but this is a brewery down by Charlie, our audio technician, down by my brother in San Marcos, California. So another gift cup. So all right. Well, thanks for the the kudos on the coffee. I gotta keep moving. So what is uh what else do you want to talk about? You want to talk about some sketches, maybe?
yeah. I mean, Coffee Sketch podcast. So we can just certainly dive into
Time to move on.
some fresh ones.
So, all right, let's get the technology working. Unlike last time, which the edit is in progress so far, no major hiccups. Oh, how this? It's weird. I pasted it in twice. That's not what I wanted. Well, anyway, let's zoom in here. Unless you want to start with the other sketch.
No, this is great.
Cool. And actually, you wanted. Let's see. Let's try this position. How about that? A little side by side action. So, this one is actually when you posted this, um, kind of freaked me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. The so you have this supersized human form over top of like a urban street wall, building shared walls, very sort of English looking, sort of London uh, street scene or something like that. Very dense urban space, and then you have this giant figure behind it with a vague face, and so I don't know. I mean, you like my reactions, I hope,
Yeah,
but
no,
this one
this was no. I mean,
caught me
this
off
is
guard a tiny bit.
well, and it's a perfect sketch for today. I think we'll just sort of keep it with this one because it relates to our whole discussion about resilience and climate and a little bit of form following fiction. One of the themes that I've brought out before, but it uh, it also has that figure in a field, sort of that hybrid landscape. Um,
Hmm.
um, but this is an inspired sketch from uh, a little bit of a deep dive that I've done here recently and finished um, the first season of The Peripheral.
Oh,
Yeah, and so clearly Kurt has not seen The Peripheral, so that's okay. But do you know
is
who
it
William?
suspenseful?
It is. Do you know who William Gibson is? Like
Hmm.
Neuromancer. Like
Oh,
he was he was sort of one of the. He basically is sort of the cyberpunk, author that really kind of popularized that sort of genre. Um, and it's um, I've loved him as an author. And when I saw that there was a TV adaptation of one of his more recent books, I was pretty excited. I hadn't read The Peripheral yet. I had it, so I read it, and then watched the series. Um, but it's um, this is, as you say, it's sort of a street scene, London town, near future, with these very large statues that are when they do sort of street scenes, you sort of see them in the background, sort of super scaled figures, and then there's some aerial shots where they kind of glimpse London, and you see them sort of these statues sort of that are super scaled, sort of sprinkled throughout. Um, and what's great about this is that you're getting this idea that architecture really becomes a character in the story a little bit. It's not a super prominent character, but definitely very interesting.
I'm just taking a note here. Peripheral. Well, that's cool. I actually kind of hit it on the head there. Huh.
Yeah, well, and and what I didn't say about the climate aspect is so the statues are um, kind of living machines in a sense, where they're taking CFCs out of the air and they're sort of trying to address sort of um, carbon reduction efforts.
Sequestration.
Yeah. Um, and they're sort of very visual, very very prominent, obviously, but they're scrubbing the air basically. They're carbon scrubbers, and so it's a really kind of interesting um, sub notion to the whole thing that you kind of hear it in passing, and then that thread they keep pulling on it a little bit throughout the story. I won't give too much away, but it's as an architecture and art feature, it just sort of it really spoke to me. So
That's cool. That is, I'm totally intrigued now to go watch this. Is it as long as it? So I asked about the suspense because Danielle is not a big fan of suspenseful anything that can induce anxiety.
oh yeah,
It doesn't.
This is not for D. No, definitely not. No.
So what you're saying is I now have to watch this by myself,
You got to watch this one by yourself, buddy. Sorry.
and then have to carefully find the time that it won't overlap with Danielle's lifestyle.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That sounds cool though. It's funny, the idea of carbon sequestration store. I mean, that's embodied carbon or um, um, a sink, or carbon storage device. Kind of interesting. So you read the book. Is it more than one book?
Just one.
Okay. And Charlie is a big fan of. I think he's read Neuromancer. He's a big more. Well, he's read more sci-fi than I have. Well, I don't know. It's probably just been a while. Um, I
It was really good. I hadn't. I mean, I like a good sci-fi novel, and I like the ones that are sort of nearer history. So it's like closer to now time and sort of interpreting kind of a nearer future. And this really kind of fits the bill. So it's really intriguing. And for me, it was great because I got to kind of explore a couple different techniques. Used a few different, used like 3 different pens on this one, but still tried to do it really relatively fast.
So did you hit? I mean, was there a time, like a 10, 20-minute thing on the
15
minutes? Yeah, I could see some of the pen, like either like a Prismacolor or it's just Sharpie.
It was a
dried out.
Prisma. It was a Prisma. Yeah. It was a little bit kind of a dry Prisma, but it was like it was all sort of gray on gray on gray. And it was a night, it's sort of the street scene was sort of a night scene. So it was like, okay, how do you kind of render this, kind of golem, kind of figure kind of over the top of kind of looming over the street that like you said, it's the face is intentionally a little bit obscured, and wanted to get several different layers of shadow in it, but also pick up some of the detail. So that's why I opted for the second pen. Otherwise, I probably would have just done crosshatch or something like that, or or the lines in the sky, like is still present here. But
yeah, which are cool. And actually, the level of detail as it fades, where I guess the perspective recedes, and then you just drop out the ornament and the detail helps create some more of that depth as well. Plus the scale of this. Well, you can't see my mouse. I got to point over here. So the scale of this, this curving facade on the left, and some of the detail in that. But yeah, the sky is kind of cool. It blends in with the sort of ominous character. So these statues, though, they don't move.
No, they don't move. No, that would be a lot. Yeah,
I'm really intrigued though. That's kind of fun. I would like to check this thing out.
Well, and what's great about the series is like you see the sort of London of the near future in one of the episodes early on, and everybody just sort of takes it for granted that these things are there. Like no one there's no effort to explain it. It's just there. And then at some point it becomes a little bit of a plot device, and there is a little level of explanation of it, and you're like, and at that point as a viewer you're sort of recalling all these previous images that you're seeing of it and sort of the setting that it's creating. And one of the characters sort of remarks that like the protagonist is a young woman, and uh, it sort of comes into her own in the series. But she kind of makes an early remark about, I've never gotten to travel anywhere, and so she's excited to go to London and sort of see this, and you can sort of see her kind of looking around at some of this stuff like, this doesn't quite all make sense to me. And you as the viewer, you're kind of being taken along for this sort of narrative ride as well. Um, and so yeah, it's really well captured. It's not sort of overwrought in terms of explanation or anything like that. It almost becomes believable. That there's these giant carbon scrubbers that are littering the city, or dotted around the landscape.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds really cool. The draw, plus the drawing. It's kind of funny how almost like Jamie planned this to talk about some resiliency, talk about this show, but it's not necessarily all about the impact of climate, or is it
It,
trying to focus on that?
it is a definite theme in the show.
Hmm.
It's not one, but it's not kind of hitting you over the head with it. It's just that it like any good science fiction. It's and any sort of good narrative. It's taking some kind of something that feels a bit familiar, that maybe you don't know a ton about, but kind of asking the tough questions about what if, and if there's a solution, or is it going to impact this story and these characters, and yeah, and like you started to say about sequestration, and carbon sinks and embodied energy. um, Imagine now, as a practicing architect, um, how do you have those conversations with folks? I mean, that's
Yeah.
a real, because it's in our timeline right now, and in real life, um, it's politicized, right? And and unnecessarily so, as a
Mhm.
topic. I think it's something that everyone can acknowledge, that the weather patterns are changing, and that they're having an effect on our lives, our built environment, our businesses, um, our practice as architects. But I think part of it, for me at least, is, how do you talk about that with folks? Where if you have done some of the homework, and you are trying to give them tools to understand their particular needs or project or response, how do you do it in a way where you're not kind of overwhelming them with tech or information, and balancing that with good design?
What's wrong with a little tech?
Well,
But
Mr. Passive House, yes.
yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. The topic amongst people that even are in practice, understanding what embodied carbon means
Right,
from a material. So it's not just the building. You got to dig into every single material in the building, and then add how it got to the site,
right,
and go back then farther, and then how it was made, and then what are the materials that went into the base product. So like a sheet of plywood, a sheet of drywall, a piece of rebar, and the energy that goes in. So trying to attribute all those steps in the process of delivering a building is hard enough for us to get a hold of. And there's really, there's quite a few calculators out there,
right,
but it's actually very difficult. And because I'm trying to teach this, it's very difficult to calculate, because you almost need the full bill of materials from the construct contractor to
right.
understand how much carbon it actually is going to be. And so you have to get quite far into the process. to be as
Well,
accurate as possible.
well, and because and this isn't sort of me trying to prognosticate or something like that, but I can imagine a future, in the not too distant future, where we're talking about tax credits for building choices and for carbon response, and not where it's like lead credits where you're like, oh, I'm buying some energy production over here from this source, and you have absolutely no connection to that source other than money. And that's yes, that's important to get other forms of energy online and to supplement those to get them up to a different level of production. I agree. But that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where you've got property owner with a commercial building who is making decisions with their design professional about understanding, like what you're describing, the bill of goods of the building that they have, and then the things that they want to do to it. So that the investment that they're making in their property, their real estate, and is the government, through a climate action policy, or the state or the local municipality through a climate action response, realizing that there's some benefit for that person to make particular decisions that are more of a carbon neutral future. And that makes us, part of that process, both in providing good choices to our clients, but also, educating ourselves about what those possibilities are. And those calculators, the calculators are designed for big buildings. That's still my crux of all this is everything's designed for big buildings, and there's no it's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out why. But the reality is where the rubber meets the road for all of this is in the small and medium sized projects, and having that momentum in those works, so that they don't get left behind, and that the practice, as a practicing architect, we don't get left behind as a practice in it. But I could see carbon credits, carbon tax credits, or some, whatever nomenclature you put to it. I could see that as a reality, starting to sprinkle into how projects are financed, how developments, start to occur, where they're coupled with affordable housing tax credits or historic preservation tax credits, and you start to layer those things on to make a project, viable. And that starts to affect some of your decision making, which is, I think, could be a good thing.
Yeah, I think if you compared it to the like LIHTC and the historic tax credits that we know of, it may be easier to make that segue and just include a branch of carbon tax credits. I did find a calculator that is actually probably good for, say, smaller projects, but it's definitely an early phase. So you don't need to get too far into the details. So and I've been using this just recently with some students. And so the cool part is, so it was born out of necessity. As the year was ending last year, I was in need of continuing education credits, and I got an email. Actually, somehow AI must have been a social media post from AIA California, and they did a week-long series on net zero uh, learning credits. And so one session was about this early phase carbon calculator called Epic from EHDD Architects, which they're in the Bay Area, I think. I forget. But they're California architect. And the cool part is it's totally free. And they want it to be free. Like they don't have any plans, at least at the moment, to like, well, they've not just kept it inside the walls of the office,
Right.
which many companies tend to do, but they've put it online. It's totally web based. You just need to log in, create a login. There's no cost, and so and it's actually pretty simple to use. There is some documentation with it, but I got to watch a demonstration of how it works, and it calculates um, based, pulls database material. So as far as understanding what other buildings of a similar type in square footage, and it will rough out like a, a lifespan, so a 30-year lifespan of the carbon footprint of the building. And then you can make scenarios where you're improving that carbon footprint by reducing carbon up front, or creating, um, going to taking off fossil fuels and all these little measures. And it will show you side by side how each one of those changes impacts the carbon, the sort of bottom line of carbon. It's really cool. I'll have to send you the link to it.
No, absolutely. I'd love that. And because I think that that's the thing is that, energy modeling and programs like that are, they can be robust and they can be expensive, and there's a technical acumen to it that, the price of entry, so to speak, not necessarily literal price, but the price of entry to help have a better energy response, even, to your design or to the building, is too much. And, but there are, dollars and cents credits, for folks to even tax credits associated with energy, that unless you have, oh, there you go. Perfect. Unless you have like a bevy of consultants and a really big project, you know, you're not going to necessarily access those things. And that's unfortunate, because I think that there's a lot of energy upgrades and things like that, that are targeted for the smaller and medium-sized kinds of projects. But the calculators and the modeling systems are not necessarily open source, like what you're showing here for the carbon calculator. And so it's difficult. It's exclusionary in a sense, to be dramatic about it. So yeah, it's like I'm looking forward to check this out.
Yeah, the what was the other thing I was trying to say? The open source nature, and then and then going back to your presentation or your workshop that you're going into, is that you and I know that the most sustainable project is using an existing building, because at the moment, half your carbon is in building the building in the first place. The other half is in operational. So, like you said, including a tax credit or something like that, and incentivizing or encouraging people to pursue carbon reduction measures, the more you can reduce that operational, you then are taking parts out of the equation, really.
Right.
Well,
Well,
and then you have a smaller and smaller, thing to tackle.
and I think the way I've described it, sort of simply put, to like a property owner, or someone who's trying to wrap their head around, like, why doesn't this happen more, is that, you're adding in, if you think about like a math equation, you're adding in an element, the known quantity of the building. Okay, it's not a tabula rasa, clean slate, blank sheet of paper where I get to program whatever I'm going to do. Here's my budget. Here's my schedule. Here's, code and zoning and whatever, but I can basically design whatever I want. This has some immediate knowns. The immediate known is, here's the existing building. How do I adapt that existing building to this new program? That's a good design problem. And for those of us who like that, and see it as that, a challenge or a problem, um, you know, we're not going to shy away from it. And on the flip side, just like you described, that's really the future we all need to be really practicing in, and be thinking in and thinking strategically about, and helping other folks who are having difficulty getting there, or who have questions about it, and who can't see that old container being used for something new. Helping them get there from here, because that's where practice really needs to be. And if hopefully you'll enjoy the show. You know, Even though you're going to be watching it solo, but it's a good one. I think you'll like it.
I could just leave out the the suspense comment with Danielle, and then perhaps it will at least get one episode in before she.
Right. She's like, oh, well, these characters are really compelling. Okay. Yeah.
Well, if there's if there's too much suspense in the first one, I can at least sneak one in, and then it hits the chopping block, and then I'll have to go watch elsewhere. But um, I forgot what I was going to say, but oh yeah, regarding the idea of reuse in small projects is I actually have a really fun house that I'm working on, and the clients are ready finally to go for the project as far as construction. And it's an 1870s old farmhouse that's been added onto, we think, at least twice. And it's quirky. I'll have to create a decent rendering and show you kind of the before after, and I'll paste it and we can have a little chat about it in the future. But the um the client is, so it's in a relatively well, like, affluent, stable neighborhood uh south of here. It's in Rochester. It's not in Flint. And a lot of their neighbors, they'll buy the house, knock it down, and build what they want, right? Because these old houses have small doorways and quirky little nooks and crannies and stuff like that. But my clients don't want to do that. And so I've created a very interesting surgical renovation. The footprint is staying the same, kind of restructuring the roof lines, and then reworking some of the interior to make the kitchen and dining flow a little better, and the master bed bath sort of more modern because it's well, a little more elbow room and stuff like that. And so I'm excited about it because it was something that uh had a few starts and stops, and the pandemic being one of them, right? Oh, and then
Right.
a wedding, a child's wedding, getting in was another one.
There's
Um,
always lots, but it's nice when a client sort of finds you, in a way where you know, you both would approach the project in sort of the same way. It's still you to be the guide, but it's nice to know that they're ready for the journey. So yeah, I'm look forward to seeing it.
yeah, it's a fun one, and I think it speaks a lot to what you were saying before. Is how do you how do you bring this to the everyday, or the broader audience, or client base that exists, because those big buildings just, they relatively get built and designed by a small section of the population, but we have millions of square feet, or trillions, or whatever you want to say, of existing small housing stock or small project stock. So anyway, yeah, so a lot of interesting themes and thoughts that we kind of brought to light,
Yeah,
in your
in our new
sketch.
tech world, our new streaming environment, which is fun. We're sort of figuring out sort of benefits of it, and as Kurt starts to move all the pieces around on the puzzle board, But it's nice that you could post the link while we're talking, and yeah, I think we'll figure out some new innovations with this as we move forward. I'm excited.
Yeah, once the shiny object goes away, we get used to it. I won't be playing around with it. I'm also having some as we have tech ups, there's some tech downs, and I'm getting a distracting amount of feedback into my headphones from my own voice. But it goes away. But if we switch and you talk and then I talk and it comes back. So I thought that was going to go away with Zoom, but it has not. So now I have to do a little troubleshooting, fix that stuff. So anyway, as with anything that we do, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Anyway, thanks. I think we'll wrap it there.
Yeah, thanks.